The 18th Book of the Odysseys of Homer. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Phil Schempf. The 18th Book of the Odysseys of Homer. Translated by George Chapman. The Argument. Ulysses and the rogue Irus fight. Penelope vouchsafes her sight to all her wooers, who present gifts to her, ravish'd with content. A certain parley then we sing betwixt a wooer and the king. Another argument. Sigma. The beggar's glee, the king's high fame, gifts given to see a virtuous dame. There came a common beggar to the court, who in the city begg'd of all resort. Excell'd in madness of the gut, drunk, ate, past intermission, was most hugely great. Yet had no fibres in him, nor no force. In sight a man, in mind a living corse. His true name was Arneas, for his mother imposed it from his birth, and yet another the city youth would give him, from the course he took, deriv'd out of the force that need held on him, which was up and down to run on all men's errands through the town. Which sounded Irus, when whose gut was come, he needs would bar Ulysses his own home, and fell to chiding him. "Old man," said he, "your way out of the entry quickly see be with fair language taken, lest your stay but little longer see you dragg'd away. See, sir, observe you not how all these make direct signs at me, charging me to take your heels and drag you out? But I take shame. Rise yet, y'are best, lest we two play a game at cuffs together." He bent brows, and said, "Wretch, I do thee no ill, nor once upbraid thy presence with a word, nor, what mine eye by all hands sees thee given, one thought envy, nor shouldst thou envy others. Thou mayst see the place will hold us both, and seems to me a beggar like myself, which who can mend? The gods give most to whom they are least friend. The chief goods gods give is in good to end. But to the hand strife, of which ye are so free, provoke me not, for fear you anger me. Lest the old man, on whose scorn you stood, your lips and bosom make shake hands in blood. I love my quiet well, and more will love to‐morrow than to‐day. But if you move my peace beyond my right, the war you make will never after give you will to take Ulysses' house in your begging walk." "O gods," said he, "how volubly doth talk this eating gulf, and how his fume breaks out, as from an old crack'd oven! Whom I will clout so bitterly, and so with both hands maul his chaps together, that his teeth shall fall as plain sea on the earth as any sow's that ruts the cornfields, or devours the mows. Come, close we now, that all may see what wrong an old man tempts that takes at cuffs a young." Thus in the entry of those lofty towers These two, with all spleen, spent their jarring powers. Antinous took it, laugh'd, and said, "O friends, we never had such sport. This guest contends with this vast beggar at the buffet's fight. Come, join we hands, and screw up all their spite." All rose in laughters, and about them bore All the ragged rout of beggars at the door. Then mov'd Antinous the victor's hire To all the wooers thus: "There are now at fire 2 breasts of goat, both which let law set down Before the man that wins the day's renown, With all their fat and gravy. And of both The glorious victor shall prefer his tooth, To which he makes his choice of, from us all, And ever after banquet in our hall, With what our boards yield; not a beggar more Allow'd to share, but all keep out at door." This he propos'd, and this they all approv'd. To which Ulysses answer'd, "O most lov'd, by no means should an old man, and one old in chief with sorrows, be so overbold to combat with his younger. But, alas! man's own ill‐working belly needs will pass This work upon me, and enforce me too To beat this fellow. But then you must do My age no wrong, to take my younger's part, And play me foul play, making your stroke smart Help his to conquer; for you easily may With your strengths crush me. Do then right, and lay your honours on it, in your oaths, to yield His part no aid, but equal leave the field." All swore his will. But then Telemachus his father's scoffs with comfort serious could not but answer, and made this reply: "Guest, if thine own pow'rs cheer thy victory, Fear no man's else that will not pass it free. He fights with many that shall touch but thee. I'll see thy guest right paid. Thou here art come In my protection, and to this the sum Of all these Wooers, which Antinous are And King Eurymachus, conjoin their care." Both vow'd it. When Ulysses, laying by His upper weed, his inner beggary Near show'd his shame, which he with rags prevented Pluck'd from about his thighs, and so presented Their goodly sight, which were so white and great, And his large shoulders were to view so set By his bare rags, his arms, his breast, and all, So broad and brawny, their grace natural Being kept by Pallas, ever standing near, That all the Wooers his admirers were Beyond all measure; mutual whispers driven Through all their cluster, saying: "Sure as heav'n, Poor Irus pull'd upon him bitter blows; Through his thin garment what a thigh he shows!" They said, but Irus felt; his coward mind Was mov'd at root; but now he needs must find Facts to his brags, and forth at all parts fit The servants brought him, all his arteries smit With fears and tremblings; which Antinous saw, And said: "Nay, now too late comes fear. No low thou shouldst at first have giv'n thy braggart vein, Nor should it have so swell'd, if terrors strain Thy spirits to this pass, for a man so old And worn with penuries that still lay hold On his ragged person. Howsoever, take this vow from me for firm, That if he make thy forces stoop, and prove His own supreme, I'll put thee in a ship, And down the stream send thee ashore Where King Echetus reigns, The roughest tyrant that the world contains; And he will slit thy nostrils, crop each ear, Thy shame cut off, and give it dogs to tear." This shook his nerves the more. But both were now brought to the lists, And up did either throw his heavy fists. Ulysses, in suspense to strike so home That he should fright from thence his coward soul, His trunk laid prostrate there, or let him take More leisure to his fear, and stoop'd him by degrees. The last show'd best, to strike him slightly, out of fear The rest would else discover him. But peace now broke, on his right shoulder Irus laid his stroke. Ulysses struck him just beneath the ear, His jaw bone broke, and made the blood appear; When straight he strew'd the dust, and made his cry Stand for himself, with whom his teeth did lie, Spit with his blood out, and against the ground His heels lay sprawling. Up the hands went round Of all the Wooers, all at point to die With violent laughters. Then the king did ply The beggar's feet, and dragg'd him forth the hall, Along the entry to the gates and wall; Where leaving him, he put into his hand A staff, and bade him there use his command On swine and dogs, and not presume to be The lord of the guests, or of the beggary, Since he of all men was the scum and curse, And so bade please with that, or fare yet worse. Then cast he on his scrip, all patch'd and rent, Hung by a rotten cord, and back he went To greet the entry's threshold with his seat. The Wooers throng'd to him, and did entreat With gentle words his conquest, laughing still; Pray'd Jove and all the Gods to give his will What most it wish'd him, and would joy him most, Since he so happily had clear'd their coast Of that unsavoury morsel; whom they vow'd To see with all their utmost haste bestow'd Aboard a ship, and for Epirus sent To King Echetus, on whose throne was spent The worst man's seat that breath'd. And thus was grac'd Divine Ulysses, who with joy embrac'd Even that poor conquest. Then was set to him The goodly goat's breast promis'd, that did swim In fat and gravy, by Antinous; And from a basket by Amphinomus Were 2 breads giv'n him; who besides Renown'd his banquet with a golden goblet crown'd, And this high salutation: "Frolic, guest, And be those riches that you first possess'd Restor'd again with full as many joys, As in your poor state I see now annoys." "Amphinomus," said he, "you seem to me Exceeding wise, as being the progeny Of such a father as authentic fame Hath told me was so, one of honour'd name, And his great revenues in Dulichius, His fair name Nisus, he is blazon'd thus. and knew to be his son his wisdom erring, as well as wealth his state in naught impairing. To prove which always, let me tell you this, as warning you to shun the miseries that follow full states, if they be not held with wisdom still at full, and so compelled to courses that abode not in their brows, by too much swing their sudden overthrows. Of all things breathing or that creep on earth, Nought is more wretched than a human birth. Blest men think never they can cursed be, While any power lasts to move a knee. But when the blest Gods make them feel that smart, That fled their faith so, as they had no heart They bear their sufferings, and what well They might have clearly shunn'd, they then meet in despite. The mind of man flies still out of his way, Unless God guide and prompt it every day. I thought me once a blessed man with men, And fashion'd me to all so counted then, Did all injustice like them, what for lust, Or any pleasure, never so unjust I could by power or violence obtain, And gave them both in all their powers the rein. Bold of my fathers and my brothers still, While which held good, my arts seem'd never ill. And thus is none held simply good or bad, But as his will is either miss'd or had. All goods God's gifts man calls, howe'er he gets them, And so takes all. What price soe'er God sets them says not how ill they come, Nor will control that ravine in him, Though it cost his soul. And these parts here I see these Wooers play, take all that falls, And all dishonours lay On that man's queen, that, tell your friends, doth bear No long time's absence, but is passing near. Let God then guide thee home, lest he may meet In his return thy undeparted feet. For when he enters, and sees men so rude, The quarrel cannot but in blood conclude." This said, he sacrificed, then drunk, and then Referr'd the giv'n bowl to the guide of men, Who walk'd away, afflicted at his heart, Shook head, and fear'd that these facts would convert To ill in the end, yet had not grace to fly. Minerva stay'd him, being ordain'd to die Upon the lance of young Ulyssides. So down he sat, and then did Pallas please T' incline the queen's affections to appear To all the Wooers, to extend their cheer To the utmost lightning that still ushers death, And made her put on all the painted sheath, That might both set her Wooers' fancies high, And get her greater honour in the eye Ev'n of her son and the sov'reign than before. Who laughing yet, to show her humour bore No serious appetite to that light show, She told Eurynomé, that not till now She ever knew her entertain desire To please her Wooers' eyes, but oft on fire She set their hate, in keeping from them still. Yet now she pleas'd t' appear, though from no will To do them honour, vowing she would tell Her son that of them that should fit him well To make use of; which was, not to converse Too freely with their pride, nor to disperse His thoughts amongst them, since they us'd to give Good words, but through them ill intents did drive. Eurynomé replied: "With good advice You vow his counsel, and your open guise. Go then, advise your son nor keep more close Your cheeks, still drown'd in your eyes' overflows, But bathe your body, and with balms make clear Your thicken'd count'nance. Uncomposéd cheer And ever mourning will the marrow wear. Nor have you cause to mourn; your son hath now Put on that virtue, which, in chief, your vow Wish'd, as your blessing at his birth, might deck His blood and person. But forbear to speak Of baths or balmings, or of beauty now," The queen replied, "lest urging comforts you Discomfort much, because the Gods have won The spoil of my looks since my lord was gone. But these must serve. Call hither then to me Hippodamia and Autonoé, That those our train additions may supply Our own deserts. And yet besides, not I, With all my age, have learn'd the boldness yet T' expose myself to men, unless I get Some other gracers." This said, forth she went To call the ladies, and much spirit spent To make their utmost speed, for now their queen Would both herself show, and make them be seen. But now Minerva other projects laid, And through Icarius' daughter's veins convey'd Sweet sleep's desire, in whose soft fumes Involv'd, she was soon as laid, and quite Dissolv'd with all her lineaments. The Goddess then bestow'd immortal gifts on her, That men might wonder at her beauties. and the beams that glister in the deified supremes she cleared her morning countenance up withal. Even such a radiance as doth round empall crowned Cytherea, when her ordered places conduct the bevy of the dancing Graces, she added to her own, more plump, more high, and fair than the polish'd ivory, rendering her parts and presence. This grace done, away the Deity flew, and up did run her lovely wristed ladies, with a noise that blew the soft chains from her sleeping joys, when she her fair eyes wiped, and gasping said: "O me unblest! How deep a sweet sleep spread his shades about me! Would Diana please to shoot me with a death no more diseas'd as soon as might be, that no more my moan might waste my blood in weepings never done, for want of that accomplish'd virtue spher'd in my lov'd lord, to all the Greeks preferr'd." Then she descended with her maids, and took place in the portal, whence her beamy look reach'd every wooer's heart. Yet cast she on so thin a veil, that through it quite there shone a grace so stol'n, it pleas'd above the clear, and sunk the knees of every wooer there, their minds so melted in love's vehement fires, that to her bed she heighten'd all desires. The prince then coming near, she said: "O son, thy thoughts and judgments have not yet put on that constancy in what becomes their good, which all expect in thee. Thy younger blood did sparkle choicer spirits, but arriv'd at this full growth, wherein their form hath thriv'd beyond the bounds of childhood, and when now beholders should affirm, this man doth grow like the rare son of his matchless sire, his goodliness, his beauty, and his fire of soul aspir'd to, thou mak'st nothing good of thy fate, nor fortune, nor thy height of blood in manage of thy actions. What a deed of foul desert hath thy gross suff'rance freed beneath thine own roof, a poor stranger here us'd most unmanly? How will this appear to all the world, when fame shall trumpet out, that thus and thus are our guests beat about our court unrighted? 'Tis a blaze will show extremely shameful to your name and you." "I blame you not, O mother," he replied, "That this clear wrong sustain'd by me you chide. Yet know I both the good and bad of all, Being past the years in which young errors fall. But, all this known, skill is not so exact To give, when once it knows, things fit their fact. I well may doubt the prease of strangers here, Who, bent to ill, and only my nerves near, May do it in despite. And yet the jar Betwixt our guests and Irus was no war Wrought by the Wooers, nor our guests sustain'd Wrong in that action, but the conquest gain'd. And would to Jove, Minerva, and the Sun, That all your Wooers might serve contention For such a purchase as the beggar made, And wore such weak heads. Some should death invade, Strew'd in the entry; some embrew'd the hall, Till every man had vengeance capital, Saddled like Irus at the gates, his head Every way nodding, like one forfeited To reeling Bacchus, knees nor feet his own, To bear him where he's better lov'd or known. Their speeches giv'n this end, Eurymachus began his courtship, and express'd it thus: "Most wise Icarius' daughter, if all those That did for Colchos venturous sail dispose For that rich purchase, had before but seen Earth's richer prize in the Ithacensian queen, They had not made that voyage, but to you Would all their virtues and their beings vow. Should all the world know what a worth you store, To morrow than to day, and the next light, more Your court should banquet, since to all dames You are far preferr'd, both for the grace of show, In stature, beauty, form in every kind Of all parts outward, and for faultless mind." "Alas," said she, "my virtue, body, form, The Gods have blasted with that only storm That ravish'd Greece to Ilion, since my lord For that war shipp'd, bore all my goods aboard. If he, return'd, should come and govern here My life's whole state, the grace of all things there His guide would heighten, as the spirit it bore Which dead in me lives, giv'n him long before. A sad course I live now; Heav'n's stern decree With many an ill hath numb'd and deaded me. He took life with him, when he took my hand In parting from me to the Trojan strand. These words my witness: Woman, I conceive That not all the Achives bound for Troy Shall leave their native earth their safe returned bones; Fame saying, that Troy trains up approved sons In deeds of arms. brave putters off of shafts, for winging lances masters of their crafts, unmatched riders, swift of foot, and straight can arbitrate a war of deadliest weight. Hope then can scarce fill all with life's supply, and of all any failing, why not I? Nor do I know if God hath marshall'd me amongst the safe return'd, or his decree hath left me to the thraldom order'd there. However, all cares be thy burthens here, my sire and mother tend as much now, I further off, more near in cares be you. Your son to man's state grown, wed whom you will, and, you gone, his care let his household fill. Thus made my lord his will, which heav'n sees prov'd almost at all parts, for the sun remov'd down to his set ere long will lead the night of those abhorr'd nuptials, that should fright each worthy woman, which her second are with any man that breathes, her first lord's care dead, because he to flesh and blood is dead, which I fear I shall yield to, and so wed a second husband, and my reason is, since Jove hath taken from me all his bliss. Whom God gives over, they themselves forsake, their griefs their joys, their God their devil make. And 'tis a great grief, nor was seen till now in any fashion of such men as woo a good and wealthy woman, and contend who shall obtain her, that those men should spend her beeves and best sheep, as their chiefest ends, but rather that herself, and all her friends they should with banquets and rich gifts entreat. Their life is death, that live with others meet. Divine Ulysses much rejoic'd to hear His queen thus fish for gifts, and keep in cheer. Their hearts with hope that she would wed again, her mind yet still her first intent retain. Antinous saw the Wooers won to give, and said: "Wise queen, by all your means receive Whatever bounty any wooer shall use. Gifts freely giv'n 'tis folly to refuse. For know, that we resolve not to be gone To keep our own roofs, till of all some one, Whom best you like, your long woo'd love shall win." This pleas'd the rest, and ev'ry one Sent in his present by the herald. First had place Antinous' gift, a robe of special grace, Exceedingly full and fair, and 20 hues Changed lustre to it; to which choice of shows 12 massy plated buttons, all of gold, And rich the substance, made to fairly hold The robe together, all laced down before, Where keeps and catches both sides of it wore. Eurymachus a golden tablet gave, In which did Art her choicest works engrave, And round about an amber verge did run, That cast a radiance from it like the sun. Eurydamas 2 servants had, that bore 2 goodly earrings, whose rich hollows wore 3 pearls in either, like so many eyes, Reflecting glances radiant as the skies. The king Pisander, great Polyctor's heir, A casket gave, exceeding rich and fair. The other wealthy gifts commended To her fair hand, which took, and straight Ascended this Goddess of her sex Her upper state, her ladies all her gifts Elaborate upbearing after. All to dancing then the Wooers went, And song's delightful strain, in which they frolick'd till the evening came, And then rais'd sable Hesperus his flame, When, for their lights within, they set up there 3 lamps, whose wicks were wood exceeding sere And passing porous, which they caus'd to burn, Their matter ever minister'd by turn Of sev'ral handmaids; whom Ulysses seeing too conversant with Wooers, ill agreeing with guise of maids, advis'd in this fair sort: "Maids of your long lack'd king, keep you the port Your queen's chaste presence bears. Go up to her, employ your looms or rocks, And keep ye there. I'll serve to feed these lamps. Should these lords' dances last till Aurora cheer'd us with their glances, They cannot weary me, for I'm one Born to endure when all men else have done." They wantonly brake out in laughters all, Look'd on each other, and to terms did fall Cheek proud Melantho, who was Dolius' seed, Kept by the queen, that gave her dainty bread Fit for her daughter, and yet won not so Her heart to her, to share in any woe She suffer'd for her lord, but she was great With great Eurymachus, and her love's heat In his bed quench'd. And this choleric thing Bestow'd this railing language on the king: "Base stranger, you are taken in your brain, You talk so wildly. Never you again can get where you were born, and seek your bed in some smith's hovel, or the market stead, but here you must take confidence to prate before all these, for fear can get no state in your wine-hardy stomach. Or 'tis like to prove your native garb, your tongue will strike on this side of your mouth still, being at best. Is the man idle-brained for want of rest, or proud because he beat the roguish beggar? Take heed, sir, lest some better man beleaguer your ears with his fists, and set headlong hence your bold abode here with your blood's expense. He, looking sternly on her, answered her, Dog, what broad language giv'st thou? I'll prefer your usage to the prince, that he may fall foul on your fair limbs till he tell them all. This frayed the wenches, and all straight got gone in fear about their business, every one confessing he said well. But he stood now close by the cressets, and did looks bestow on all men there, his brain employed about some sharper business than to dance it out, which had not long to go. Nor therefore would Minerva let the wooers' spleens grow cold with too good usage of him, that his heart might fret enough, and make his choler smart. Eurymachus provoked him first, and made his fellow laugh, with the conceit he had fetch'd, far from what was spoken long before, that this poor form perhaps some deity bore. It may well chance, said he, some God doth bear this man's resemblance. For, thus standing near the glist'ring torches, his slick'd head doth throw beams round about it, as those cressets do. For not a hair he hath to give it shade. Say, will thy heart serve to undertake a trade for fitting wages? Should I take thee hence to walk my grounds, and look to every fence, or plant high trees, thy hire should raise thy forces, food store, and clothes. But these same idle courses thou art so prompt in that thou wilt not work, but forage up and down and beg and lurk in every house whose roofs hold any will to feed such fellows, that the gut may fill gives end to all thy being. He replied, I wish at any work we too were tried in height of spring‐time, when heaven's lights are long. I, a good crooked scythe that were sharp and strong, you such another, where the grass grew deep. Up by daybreak, and both our labours keep up till slow darkness ease the labouring light, fasting all day, and not a crumb till night, we then should prove our either workmanship. Or, if again, beeves that the goad or whip were apt to obey before tearing a plough, big lusty beasts, alike in bulk and brow, alike in labour, and alike in strength, our task 4 acres, to be tilled in length of one sole day. Again, then you should try if the dull glebe before the plough should fly, or I a long stitch could bear clean and even. Or lastly, if the guide of earth and heaven should stir stern war up, either here or there, and that at this day I had double spear, and shield, and steel casque fitting for my brows, at this work likewise, midst the foremost blows, your eyes should note me, and get little cause to twit me with my belly's sole applause. But you affect to affect with injury, your mind ungentle, seem in valour high because 'gainst few, and those not of the best, your conversation hath been still profess'd. But if Ulysses landed on his earth, and enter'd on the true right of his birth should come and front ye, straight his ample gates your feet would hold too narrow for your fates. He frown'd, raged, call'd him wretch, and vow'd to be his death, since he durst prove so proud amongst so many, to tell him so home what he affected, ask'd if overcome with wine he were, or, as his minions said, talk'd still so idly and were palsied in his mind's instruments, or was proud because he gat from Irus off with such applause. With all which, snatching up a stool, he threw, when old Ulysses to the knees withdrew of the Dulichian lord Amphinomus, as if he fear'd him. His dart missing thus his aged object, and his page's hand, a boy that waited on his cup's command, now holding of an ewer to him, he smit, down fell the sounding ewer, and after it the guiltless page lay sprawling in the dust, and crying out. When all the wooers thrust a tumult up amongst them, wishing all the rogue had perish'd in some hospital, before his life there stirr'd such uproars up, and with rude speeches spiced their pleasure's cup. And all this for a beggar to fulfil a filthy proverb, good still yields to ill. The prince cried out to them to let the bad obscure the good so, told 'em they were mad, abus'd their banquet, and affirm'd some God tried masteries with them, bade them take their load of food and wine, sit up, or fall to bed at their free pleasures, and since he gave head to all their freedoms, why should they mistake their own rich humours for a beggar's sake? All bit their lips, to be so taken down, and taught the course that should have been their own, admir'd the prince, and said he bravely spoke. But Nisus' son then struck the equal stroke, and said: "O friends, let no man here disdain to put up equal speeches, nor maintain with serious words and humour, nor with stroke a stranger in another's house provoke, nor touch the meanest servant, but confine all these dissensions in a bowl of wine, which fill us, cup‐bearer, that, having done our nightly sacrifice, we may atone our powers with sleep, resigning first the guest up to the prince, that holds all interest in his disposure here, the house being his in just descent, and all the faculties." This all approved, when noble Mulius, herald in chief to lord Amphinomus, the wine distributed with reverend grace to every wooer. When the gods given place with service fit, they served themselves, and took their parting cups, till when they all had struck the angry humour off, they bent to rest, and every wooer to several roofs addressed. End of the 18th Book.